When I picked up my phone to ask my son Max about the date of his wedding, my daughter-in-law Lena looked straight into my eyes and said, with a cold smile, "Oh, we got married yesterday already. Only special people were invited." Those words felt like someone poured a bucket of ice water over me. Special people. For 3 whole years, I paid their monthly rent of $500, bought every single piece of furniture in their place, and filled their refrigerator whenever they had nothing to eat. Yet I was not considered special. I stood there in the living room of my own home, holding the phone like it weighed 1,000 pounds, watching my son avoid looking at me while Lena relaxed on the sofa I had bought for them. The pale pink dress I had carefully chosen for her wedding was still hanging inside my closet, useless now, along with the brand new shoes and the illusion that I would be part of the most important day of my only son's life. I spent $200 on that dress, imagining how I would smile in Max's wedding photos I would never appear in. For weeks, I had been preparing everything. I saved $1,000 to give them as a wedding gift. I even called my sister Diana in Chicago to share the happy news. I cleaned my entire house, thinking they might stop by after the ceremony to celebrate with me. But all of that collapsed in one moment because of those 4 painful words: only special people. Max finally lifted his eyes and, sounding like he had practiced the line, said, "Mom, it was just something small and intimate. Only the 2 of us and a couple of witnesses." But I knew it wasn't true. I saw their photos online. I saw Lena's parents smiling proudly beside the bride and groom. Her siblings were raising glasses of champagne, and Lena, wearing a beautiful white dress that I had unknowingly helped pay for with the $800 I gave her the month before for her personal expenses. I saw everything I wasn't meant to see. A week later, exactly 7 days after that humiliating moment, Lena called me again, but this time her tone was completely different. Gone was the confident woman who had kept me out of her wedding. Now she sounded desperate, almost begging. "Renata, the rent is overdue. The landlord is threatening to evict us if we don't pay this week. You forgot to send the transfer." Her voice was shaking, like her world was falling apart. I kept silent for a few seconds, remembering all the times I ran to the bank just to make sure that transfer was sent. All the times I cancelled my own plans so they could have a roof over their heads. All the times I survived on beans and rice so I could give them money for their wants. And now, after excluding me from the biggest moment of their lives, they still had the nerve to call me like nothing ever happened. "Lena," I finally said, surprised at how calm my voice sounded. "Didn't I tell you, I only help special people?" The silence on the other end was so deep I could hear my own heartbeat. For the first time in years, it wasn't me who was shaking, it was her. "Renata, I don't understand," she stuttered. "We were always special to you. You were like a second mom to me." Lies. All lies. Wrapped in that sweet tone she used only when she needed something. The same voice she used when she asked me for money for the wedding dress, for the honeymoon, for the rings. Rings I helped pay for but never saw exchanged. For so many years, I felt like I was walking on eggshells, careful with every word, gesture, or gift, hoping for even a little affection from my own son. I was the perfect mother, the generous mother-in-law, the silent provider who never complained, even when they treated me like I was invisible. But that one phrase, "only special people," awakened something inside me that had been sleeping for far too long. I calculated in my mind how much money I had spent on them during those 3 years. Rent, food, gifts, emergencies, whims. It was over $20,000. $20,000 I pulled from my retirement, from my savings, from the money my late husband left so I could live peacefully in my final years. And for what? To be treated like a stranger on my own son's wedding day. That night, after I hung up, I sat on my bed and cried. But the tears weren't from sadness. They were from anger, built-up frustration, years of humiliation swallowed. I cried for every moment they made me feel that my love was a burden, my presence unwanted, and my money the only thing they valued. I cried for the foolish mother I had been, the woman who tried so hard to be essential to people who saw her as disposable. When I woke up the next morning, something inside me had changed. It wasn't just the sting of betrayal, it was deeper, colder. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. Same tired eyes, same wrinkles telling stories of love given without being returned. But now, there was something harder in my gaze. Something determined, something I hadn't seen in myself for years. I made coffee like I had every morning for 4 decades. But this time, I didn't think about calling Max to ask if he slept well. I didn't check my phone waiting for his apology. For the first time in a very long time, I was my own priority. I sat at the table where I had so often planned surprises for them, counted money for their needs, and cried quietly when they ignored me. Today, that same table would witness something completely different. I took out my checkbook and bank statements and began calculating everything. I wanted to see, down to the last cent, the true cost of my foolish generosity. Monthly rent, $500 times 36 months equals $18,000. Food and supplies, around $200 per month equals $7,200. Birthday, Christmas, anniversary gifts, $3,000. Lena's medical emergencies, $800. Car loan they never repaid, $2,500. Air conditioner repairs, $600. Living room furniture, $1,200. Total, $33,400. That was the exact price of my kindness. The $33,400 I had burned through, taken from my husband's inheritance, from my pension, from the savings I had slowly built up over decades of honest work, felt like money I had simply tossed into the wind. All that sacrifice spent to keep 2 adults comfortable, 2 adults who couldn't even pretend to show me basic respect. When the phone rang and Max's name appeared on the screen, my heart normally would have raced. I would have rushed to answer, hoping he would finally apologize and explain that everything had been some sort of misunderstanding. But this time, I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. Then silence returned, and I went on sipping my coffee as if nothing unusual had happened. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. This time, it was Lena. I ignored it too. A text from Max followed soon after. "Mom, please answer. We need to talk." I deleted the message without a single reply. Around 2 in the afternoon, I decided to take a walk, something I hadn't done in months without it being tied to some errand for them. Usually, it was the bank for transfers, the grocery store to buy whatever they needed, or the pharmacy to pick up Lena's medications. But today, I walked simply because I wanted to. I passed by the park where I used to bring Max when he was a little boy. I remembered that sweet child who hugged me tightly and told me I was the best mom in the world. When had he turned into a man who treated me like an ATM with emotions? When had I convinced myself that love and money were the same thing? When had I begun believing that I had to purchase my son's affection? At the bank, where I had made countless transfers over the years, I stopped at the entrance. The branch manager, Mr. Klen, spotted me through the glass and waved. He had known me for years. He had personally handled every transfer I made to Max and Lena. He had watched my balance shrink month after month to keep theirs afloat. I walked straight into his office. "Mr. Klein," I said, I need to cancel all the automatic transfers I have set up." He looked startled. Those transfers had been as regular as the sunrise for 3 years. "Are you sure, Mrs. Richter? Did something happen?" His concern felt more sincere than any care Max had shown me recently. "What happened is that I finally opened my eyes," I replied. "Cancel everything. And I also want to know how to secure my accounts. I don't want anyone else to access my money." While Mr. Klein handled the cancellations, my phone rang non-stop. Max, Lena, Max again. It was as if they possessed a radar that activated whenever their financial pipeline was threatened. I turned the phone off completely. "Mrs. Richter," Mr. Klein said gently as he passed me the paperwork, "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but in all these years, I've seen how generous you've been with your family. I hope no one is forcing you to make these changes." His words struck deeply. A man who barely knew me beyond numbers and signatures showed more genuine worry for my well-being than my own child. "No one is pressuring me," I said. "Quite the opposite. I finally stopped pressuring myself." When I stepped out of the bank, I felt strangely weightless, as if I had left a massive burden on Mr. Klein's desk. For the first time in years, my money was truly mine. I had no obligations to people who saw me not as a person, but as a source of income. At home, I thought about everything I had sacrificed for Max and Lena, the trips I never took to save money for them, the friends I stopped visiting because I was always on standby for their emergencies, the hobbies I abandoned because every dollar spent on myself felt like a dollar stolen from their needs. When I finally reached my house, I saw 3 vehicles parked outside: Max's, Lena's, and a third one I didn't recognize. I could see movement inside through the windows. My stomach dropped. They had keys. I had given them keys because I trusted them, because I foolishly believed they might one day care for me the way I had cared for them. I inhaled deeply before opening the door. It was time for the first true confrontation of this new chapter in my life. I stepped inside and faced a scene etched permanently in my memory. Max sat on my sofa with his head in his hands. Lena paced back and forth like a trapped animal. An older man I did not know was standing at my dining table, rifling through my documents, my personal papers. "What is happening here?" I asked, my voice louder and steadier than I expected. All 3 looked at me as though I were the intruder in my own home. Lena spoke first, her voice carrying that same urgent desperation I heard on the phone. "Renata, thank God you're here. We need to talk. Mr. Fisher is from the law firm we consulted about your situation." "My situation?" The words left my mouth calm and controlled. "What situation? I am perfectly fine." Max finally raised his head, eyes that once belonged to an innocent child, now reflecting nothing but financial fear. "Mom, we went to the bank. They told us you cancelled all the transfers. Mr. Klein also said you blocked our access to your accounts. We don't understand why you would do that." Mr. Fisher, a man in his 50s wearing a grey suit and an untrustworthy smile, stepped toward me with his hand extended. "Mrs. Richter, I'm Dr. Fisher, a family attorney. Your children are concerned about your mental health and have asked me to evaluate the situation." I did not shake his hand. Instead, I walked directly to my table and gathered all my documents he had been examining without my consent. "These are my private papers. You have no right to touch them without my permission." "Mom," Max interrupted, using that condescending tone he had mastered over the years. "We're worried about you. You've been acting strangely. First, you cut us off financially with no explanation. Then you ignore our calls. We think you might need professional help." Lena approached, reaching for my hand with that same fake tenderness she always used when she needed something. "Renata, sweetheart, we know you're under a lot of stress. Maybe the loneliness is affecting you more than you realize. At your age, moments of confusion are normal." The word confusion echoed through my mind like an alarm. Now I understood why the lawyer was here. This wasn't about protecting me, it was about declaring me mentally unfit so they could take control of my finances. The same woman who once told me they invited only special people to their wedding was now treating me like an incompetent old woman. "I am not confused," I said firmly, silencing the entire room. "In fact, I am clearer than I have been in years. And the three of you are going to leave my house right now." Mr. Fisher stepped in, using that polished professional tone lawyers use when pretending to be reasonable. "Mrs. Richter, I understand you feel overwhelmed, but your children have the right to intervene if they believe your ability to handle finances is impaired. They have observed various concerning behaviors." Concerning behaviors. A bitter laugh escaped me, sharp, almost cruel. "Like what?" I said. "Deciding that my money belongs to me? Choosing to stop funding the lifestyle of two adults who treat me like garbage?" Lena jerked back as if I had struck her. "We never treated you badly," she protested. "You're part of our family." There it was, the raw, unfiltered truth. In their minds, everything I had would someday be theirs by default. As far as they were concerned, I was already dead. They were simply collecting their inheritance ahead of schedule. It didn't matter whether I had 70 years left or 70 days. To them, I was nothing more than a problematic ATM that still happened to be breathing. "Out," I said, pointing firmly toward the door. "All three of you, leave my house." Max stood up, his face contorted into the same childish anger he used whenever he didn't get what he wanted. "Mom, we can't just walk out. We have responsibilities. The rent, the car payments, the credit card you co-signed for. You can't just cut us off overnight." "I can't?" My voice rose for the first time in the entire exchange. "Who says I can't? For years I've paid rent on a place that wasn't even mine. I stocked a refrigerator in a home where I wasn't welcome. I financed a life in which there was clearly no room for me." Mr. Fisher pulled a folder from his briefcase and placed it neatly on my table. "Mrs. Richter, we've prepared some documents to help with this transition. A temporary power of attorney that will allow Max and Lena to manage your finances until you're feeling better." I picked up the folder, didn't bother to open it, and tossed it straight into the trash bin. "The only transition happening here," I said coldly, "is yours, toward the front door." Lena began to cry, but I recognized those tears immediately. They weren't grief, they were anger, rage that had nowhere to go. "You can't do this to us, Renata," she said in a shaking voice. "We were counting on you. We made plans with your support in mind. We bought things. We committed to financial responsibilities because we knew you'd be there." "Responsibilities based on my money," I answered. "Not my happiness, not my well-being, not my company, just my money. And now that I've decided my money should be used for my own life, suddenly I'm a confused old woman who needs legal guardians." Max tried walking toward me, but I stepped back. He wasn't the little boy who used to run into my arms after nightmares. He was now a 35-year-old man who viewed his mother as an obstacle between himself and an easy life paid for by someone else. "Mom, we messed up," he said, trying to sound remorseful. "The wedding was just a misunderstanding. Lena was stressed. I was pressured. We can fix all of this if you just go back to being reasonable." Reasonable. The word tasted bitter. "Reasonable," I repeated. "Do you mean continuing to finance your lifestyle while you treat me like a stranger? You mean pretending it didn't break my heart when you excluded me from the most important day of my only son's life?" Mr. Fisher gathered his documents with the smooth efficiency of someone accustomed to rejected offers. "Mrs. Richter," he said, "this isn't over. Your family has legal avenues. If you're making irrational decisions because of mental health concerns, a judge can order guardianship. His words struck like a physical blow. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. It was a genuine legal threat. They were trying to label me incompetent to seize control of everything I owned. I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "Mr. Fisher, before you threaten a 71-year-old woman who has flawlessly managed her finances for 4 decades, raised her son alone after her husband died, ran a household, worked honorably until retirement, and, until last week, supported 2 fully capable adults, I suggest you do far more research." Lena abruptly stopped crying and stared at me with a coldness that finally revealed her real nature. "This isn't how things will end, Renata. We have rights, and lawyers too." "Excellent," I replied. "Hire every lawyer you want, but do it with your own money because mine will no longer be funding your legal tantrums." They all walked toward the door with the wounded pride of people unaccustomed to hearing the word no. Before stepping outside, Max turned back to me. "Mom, this is going to turn out very badly for you. You'll end up alone with no one to take care of you when you actually need help." "Max," I said softly, with sadness mixed with an icy clarity, "I already am alone. The difference is that this time it's by my own choice, not because you neglected me." When the door finally closed behind them, I stood in my living room, surrounded by the most beautiful silence I had heard in years. It was the silence of freedom. That night I couldn't sleep, not from sorrow or regret, but from the adrenaline of reclaiming control over my life. I lay awake, planning the next steps like a general mapping out a battle strategy. If Max and Lena wanted a fight, I would give them one. But I would fight with wisdom, not emotion. At 6 a.m., I was already dressed and heading out. My first destination was the office of Attorney Weber, a man I had met years ago while handling my husband's will. Unlike Mr. Fisher, whom Max and Lena had chosen, Mr. Weber had an impeccable reputation and specialized in defending the rights of older adults. After hearing everything, he said, "What Mr. Weber told me brought me a strange mix of comfort and concern. It reassured me because it confirmed that I wasn't imagining things. What I had endured truly was abuse. But it also worried me because it made me understand that what was happening was far more serious than I had realized. We need to document everything," Mr. Weber continued. "Every transfer, every gift, every instance where they pressured you for money. We'll also update your will to make sure your assets are protected from any future attempts to manipulate you." We spent nearly 3 hours going through my financial records. Mr. Weber actually whistled when he saw the total, $33,400 in 3 years. "Mrs. Richter," he said, "with that amount you could have lived comfortably, traveled, enjoyed your retirement. Instead, you funded the entire lifestyle of 2 grown adults who didn't even respect you enough to invite you to their wedding." When I walked out of Mr. Weber's office, I had a complete strategy in mind. First, I would replace every lock in my house. Second, I would install a full security system with cameras, protecting myself from any more unannounced visits. Third, I would open a new bank account at a different bank, one they had no ties to. And fourth, I would finally start living the life I had postponed for far too long. My next stop was the hardware store. The owner, Mr. Summer, had known me for years. I was always buying things to fix Max and Lena's apartment. But this time was different. "Mrs. Richter, what brings you in today? Another emergency with your son?" he asked, clearly familiar with the pattern of my misplaced generosity. "No, Mr. Summer," I replied. "This time it's for my own home. I want to change all my locks, the best quality ones you have." He looked surprised, but he didn't ask questions. As I selected the locks, his son Ethan, who installs security systems, happened to walk by. It felt like fate. "Ethan," I told him, "I also need surveillance cameras installed. The full system. Price doesn't matter." While they prepared everything for installation the next day, my phone rang from an unfamiliar number. It was Lena, calling from someone else's phone because I had blocked hers after yesterday's confrontation. "Renata, it's Lena. Please don't hang up. We need to talk like civilized adults." "Go ahead," I said plainly. "Listen, I know you're hurt about the wedding. It was a mistake. Max and I talked and we want to make it up to you. How about a special dinner to celebrate with you? We can cook together like before." The manipulation was so transparent I almost laughed. "Lena," I asked, "exactly how much rent do you owe right now?" Her sudden silence told me I had hit the target. 2 months, around $1,000. But that's not why I'm calling, Renata. We really miss you." "Do you miss me or my money?" I asked bluntly. "Both," she admitted with startling honesty. "Yes, we need your financial help, but we love you too. You matter to us." "If I'm so important," I replied, "then why wasn't I important enough to be at your wedding? Why am I only important when you need money? When was the last time you called just to ask how I was doing?" Another long silence. We both knew the answer. Never. "Lena, listen carefully. For 3 years you treated me like an ATM with emotions. You used me, ignored me, humiliated me. And finally, you insulted me in the cruelest way possible. Now that the money has stopped, suddenly you're full of love?" "Renata, please," I cut her off. "There is no please. You made your choice when you decided I wasn't special enough to attend your wedding. Now I'm making mine." I hung up and powered off my phone. I didn't want anything interrupting my day of freedom. That afternoon, I visited the beauty salon, a place I hadn't stepped into in over a year. I always cancelled my appointments because Max or Lena needed something urgent, or because the money set aside for me suddenly became their emergency. "Mrs. Richter," my favourite stylist Cynthia exclaimed. "What a surprise! I thought you forgot about us." "I didn't forget you, Cynthia," I said. "I just forgot that I also deserve to treat myself kindly." I indulged in everything: a haircut, colour, manicure, pedicure. For the first time in years, I spent money on myself without guilt. While Cynthia worked on my hair, she talked about her life, her kids, her dreams. It was refreshing to have a conversation that did not revolve around Max and Lena's never-ending demands. When she finished, she stepped back and smiled. "You look beautiful, Mrs. Richter, but more than that, you look free. Did something good happen?" "Yes, Cynthia," I said softly. "I finally learned how to say no." When I arrived home, a car I didn't recognize was parked near my house. My heart jumped. For a moment, I feared Max and Lena had returned with reinforcements. But as I stepped closer, I saw an older woman sitting calmly on my porch steps. "Mrs. Richter?" she asked as I approached. "Yes, that's me. Can I help you?" "I'm Eleanor Brooks," she said. "I'm your neighbour. We've lived beside each other for years, but we've never spoken. Yesterday I heard shouting from your home. I was worried. Are you all right?" Her genuine concern struck me deeply. Here was a neighbour, practically a stranger, showing more care for my well-being than my own son. "Come in, Mrs. Brooks," I said. "Let me make you some coffee and tell you a story you won't believe." While I brewed the coffee, I explained everything to Eleanor. She listened quietly, never interrupting, simply nodding on occasion. And when I finally finished, her eyes were glistening with tears. "Mrs. Richter," she said gently, "you made the right choice. I went through almost the same thing with my daughter 5 years ago. I used to believe it was my responsibility to support her adult life financially. I also convinced myself that she wouldn't love me unless I kept giving her money. What happened? I asked. I stopped giving her money when I realized the only time she called me was when she wanted something. At first it was awful. She threatened me emotionally, guilt-tripped me, tried everything to force me to continue paying. But after 6 months she called and apologized, sincerely. Now our relationship is real, based on love, not on cash. Her story filled me with a sense of hope. It reassured me that my decision wasn't just necessary, it was correct. Do you think Max and Lena will ever understand? I asked. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, she answered truthfully. But that's no longer your burden, Mrs. Richter. Your only responsibility now is to live your own life. That night, for the first time in 3 long years, I went to bed without worrying about whether Max and Lena had money for rent, groceries, or their endless whims. I went to sleep thinking about my plans, my future, and I slept better than I had in ages. The next morning, at exactly 8 o'clock, Ethan and Mr. Summer arrived to replace the locks and set up the security system. While they worked, my phone kept lighting up with unknown numbers. Lena was still trying to reach me using different phones, but I had discovered a new talent, completely ignoring calls that didn't deserve my attention. Mrs. Richter, Ethan said as he mounted the cameras, this system will give you complete peace. You'll be able to see anyone approaching your home right from your phone, even if you're away. And if someone enters without authorization, the system will automatically alert the police. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was installing a security system to protect myself from my own child. But strangely, the thought didn't hurt the way it once would have. It felt like a purely practical step to safeguard my newfound freedom. While the men continued working, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years: call my sister Diana in Chicago. We had drifted apart because every conversation had become a report about Max and Lena's achievements, how much money I had contributed, how proud I was to support them. I now saw that those updates were nothing more than financial statements disguised as family news. "Renata?" Diana answered, startled. "Sister, how are you? It's been months." "I'm good, Diana. Better than good. I'm calling to tell you that I finally woke up." I recounted the entire story: the secret wedding, the humiliation, the lawyer's visit, and my decision to cut off the financial support. Diana listened quietly, and when I finished, her response took me by surprise. "Renata, sister, it was about time. Every time we talked, it broke my heart to hear you boasting about how much money you gave them, as if love could be measured in dollars. I wanted to tell you something, but I didn't know how." "What did you want to tell me?" I asked. "That whenever I saw Max at family gatherings, he never spoke about you with affection. It was always, 'My mum paid for this,' or 'My mum bought me that.' Never once did I hear him say he missed you or loved you. It was like you were a service provider, not a mother." Her words stung, sharply, but it was a healing kind of pain, like a doctor cleansing a festering wound. It hurts, but it's necessary. "And you know what else I noticed?" Diana continued. "Lena always talked about you in the future tense." When Diana told me that Lena would say things like, "When Renata is gone, we can renovate her house," or "When we inherit her property, we'll invest it in the business," it felt like someone had poured ice-cold water down my spine. It wasn't simply that they viewed me as an ATM. They saw me as a temporary inconvenience, standing between them and the money they believed would eventually be theirs. While I was exhausting myself trying to keep them happy, they were planning a future that didn't include me at all. After I ended the call with Diana, I sat alone in my kitchen, trying to absorb everything I had just learned. I thought about the years I had been married to a man who truly loved me, the 35 years I spent raising my son alone after his death, And the last 3 years where I had bankrolled 2 adults who saw me as nothing more than a 6-figure obstacle to their imagined inheritance. The doorbell rang, and through the new security cameras, I saw Eleanor standing there with a mug in her hands. I opened the door, and she handed me freshly brewed coffee. "I thought you might want some company after everything you shared yesterday," she said, with the warm, honest smile I already cherished. We sat together in my living room, and Eleanor continued sharing pieces of her own experience. "My daughter used the same lines Lena says to you," she explained. "You're like a second mum to me. We're special to you. Everything will be ours someday anyway." "Those are rehearsed phrases, Mrs. Richter," she said. "Straight out of the Emotional Manipulation Handbook." "Do you really think such a handbook exists?" I asked half-jokingly. "Not officially," she replied, "but it sure feels like they all read from the same script. Chapter 1. Make her believe she's indispensable. Chapter 2. Manufacture endless financial emergencies. Chapter 3. When she pushes back, question her mental stability." We both laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that carries a sting. It was both amusing and heartbreaking to see such predictable patterns mirrored in our own children. "Did you ever feel guilty after you stopped giving money?" I asked. "Every day for the first 3 months," she admitted honestly. "But then I started seeing the changes. My daughter got a second job. Her husband quit golfing every weekend and found extra work. They learned to live within their means. And, more importantly, they realized I was a person, not a resource." That afternoon, I chose to do something I'd been putting off for years: visit my husband's grave. I always found excuses not to go, usually because Max or Lena had some urgent crisis, or because I felt the taxi fare was better spent on one of their so-called emergencies. The cemetery was peaceful and serene. Robert's grave looked somewhat neglected, a silent reminder of how long it had been since I last visited. I sat down on the grass beside his headstone and spoke to him as if he were right there with me. "Robert, my love, somewhere along the way I think I lost myself," I whispered. "After you passed, I poured everything I had into Max. I wanted to be the perfect mother, believing that was the only way to fill the void of him growing up without a father. But I think, in doing that, I forgot how to be me." A soft breeze passed over me, and for a moment, I felt as though he were listening. "Our son has become someone I hardly recognize. Or maybe he was always this way, and I just refused to see it. And his wife, well, you know exactly what she's like.